Alright, let's talk about Dimension Police, but sadly it's not time for you guys just yet. Alright guys, I have kept you waiting long enough. It's finally time to take a look at the premium Dimension Police deck profile post-ban list. I personally do believe that this deck is now, honestly, has a pretty good contender at being a very strong deck in the current meta. It's super tanky, games definitely last longer than they used to before the restriction list, and thanks to that, that means we can set up even tankier grade 3 shields. This list is very similar to the one that I shared on the e-newsletter that came with the Revival Selection release, thanks to Bushroad's cooperation. And so I know a lot of you guys really like, you know, seeing me talk about premium Dimension Police, I guess, so that's definitely coming right now. I'll also be posting the V premium list for post-plan collection, so with the Daikaiser stuff for V, somewhere at the end of this week maybe, or start of next week, unless something explodes and my, like, upload schedule gets delayed or something. So you can look forward to that, and then we'll also be doing a premium list later on, I think at the end of October maybe, once I've actually tested my Daikaiser list a bit more, because for the time being I've just been testing the post-restriction list, like current meta one. So once I get to actually like testing my current list in premium, we'll be able to talk about the premium list with Daikaisers in it a bit later. But anyway, here we go, it's time for premium, baby. I've actually been really enjoying playing premium lately. It's just been really fun, so I am definitely very excited for this little showcase here. Of course, if you have any questions or things you don't agree with, feel free to let me know in the comments. But if you do like the video, please give it a like. If you like my content, please do subscribe. If you need to get any product as well, go to parkage.com and use my discount code DifferentFight for 5% discount at checkout, because it does help the channel. Anyway, let's start with, of course, the grade 3. So we're going to go through the main deck, then go through the GZone, and then we'll talk about other stuff after that. First things first, of course, we play for Dieliner, still the best card to ever be printed for premium DP in my opinion. His skills are simple. First things first, he gives all of your grade 3 units plus 10k shield, so that's already a great start. And then he also once per turn lets you count +1 soul +1 to look at the top 7 of your deck, reveal up to 1 normal unit from among them and add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. And if you reveal the grade 3, then he gets +20k and a crit. We always go to Force 2 in this deck in premium, like genuinely always. I have never had the a reason to go Force 1, to be honest, because of how this deck plays. And because of that, we can actually safely ride up even going first and give up first stride, because we basically swing with like 3 crit on our first attack. You don't have to call anything else either, and basically just like swing down on them, forcing them to PG and like not have damage for their plays. We also play quite a few like grade 1s and grade 2s that hit for lesser power if necessary, so we can actually underswing and not give them CB, so that the first time they take damage, it's actually quite okay. But also once Heal Guardians come out, you should be quite okay with giving the first damage, because they will always be able to give themselves the first damage with the Heal Guardian. So for the time being, you can go for like the 0 damage deny play, but otherwise like putting them on 1 is fine, because they know that if you sack like double crit while attacking with this going first, they will be in a lot of trouble. But of course, the main reason why we play this card is because of the +10k shield, which of course pairs really well with Geomaglass. So he's our main grade 3, you always want to ride him and nothing else. The best supporting card ever printed for premium is of course the Dizoris. So Dizoris is a card you don't want to ride, but it is a very good rear guard. He says on Vanguard Circle, he gets +5k for every card in your damage zone, which doesn't really matter. But on Rearguard Circle, at the end of the battle he attacked, if your Vanguard's power is 35k or greater, please keep that in mind, I accidentally forgot that recently, count +1 and put him into your soul, and then give your Vanguard +10k power and drive +1. I've explained this in every single deck profile that we've done for premium, but this essentially allows you to have multiple drive checks, you know, even more drive checks on your X Gallop, or like twin drive or triple drive on your Stark turns as well, which is of course really strong. And of course, if you don't want to use him for a turn, like let's say, you know, you like call him off a Geomaglass, he's still a strong shield as well, thanks to Dieliner and Geomaglass. So he's a great card, you want to have him as a 4 of for your first/second stride turns. And then of course, to finish things off, we have probably one of the best grade 3s printed in premium, and it kind of hurts me because I've been testing without him for the Daikaiser list, but Diarm is just so important right now, because a lot of decks in the meta feel like they do farm up a big hand, and basically when you call him, if your opponent's hand is 10 or more cards, your 3 front row units get plus 30k power. This enables you to have huge Dizorises, this enables you to have a first stride X Gallop with very little investment, and overall it's just like if you play against anything that farms up a hand, this card is just amazing. And guess what? A lot of decks in premium do farm up a big hand. So because of that, Diarm is just fantastic, like such an amazing card. You can call it down and then intercept with it later on thanks to Geomaglass' ability, so I really do like him, but I think I will be reducing copies of him in the future in order to make space for Daikaiser, so we'll see how that goes. It really does pay me to cut him though, but we'll see how the meta kind of evolves. We might have to adjust some ratios as we go as well. Moving on to the grade 2s, this is where I need to really explain these, I think, because for some people they might seem a bit unconventional. So first things first, I still play 4 Die Dragon, and I know this card is a little bit hard to get, and I'm not really sure what you could replace it with. Maybe more copies of Gel Sludge. But honestly, the reason why I play this card is the Soul Blast one to give you Vanguard plus 5k. Sometimes you are just missing that 5k to hit a power threshold for Dizoras, or to hit a power threshold for your X Gallop or something like that. It's just that little soul conversion into power that's really, really nice. And honestly, I feel like this card is going to stay in the list too, because looking at Izard, it's not really a necessary card in Premium, because honestly, you don't rewrite in this deck. 1 force marker is all you need on the Vanguard circle. Like sure, if you get more in the rear guards, it's cool to have that extra crit pressure, but it's not necessary in my opinion. And I feel like this little like Soul Blast one to give power is very important. Of course, we have Die Prop coming up, so maybe we'll be able to make something else work, but I'm still testing that. But for the time being, this is nice. It's also a strong rear guard attacker, but we don't really use him for that purpose as much. It's more so for the Soul Blast one. And then, believe it or not, Dimension Police does have a countercharger, and a pretty good one at that, with Grand Wisdom. So this card is just a common. Run him at 3 because you don't really need more copies. When he attacks a Vanguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, you can give him plus 4k. If you do, at the end of the turn, put him into your soul and countercharge 1. So what this means is that, of course, you know, for that battle he'll stay on the board, but if let's say you use the Geomaglas to overcall him, he will still countercharge because the way of the skill's wording, so that it's like you put into the soul and then countercharge 1. So even if you don't put him into the soul, you still countercharge 1. The soul effect is also really good because we have quite a lot of Solar Blast abilities, as you'll notice, you know, Die Liner, Die Dragon, we have Gel Sludge in here, you know, we have, I like my one and only copy of Weaking as my signature as well. So the go into soul ability is also really nice, but just having a countercharge in DP is fantastic, and I think he is basically the best countercharger for DP. You could even bump him to 4 copies if you want to, like, put down 1 Die Dragon or something. And then to finish off, I played 2 copies of Gel Sludge. This slot used to be the Die Ballot, but I think this is just a better version of Die Ballast. So when he's ridden or called, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 2 or higher, Soul Blast 1 and choose one of the following effects to perform. But if your opponent's grade 3 or higher, you do both effects. So it basically tells your opponent, like, you have the option to Counterblast 1, but if you don't, I will draw. And you have the option to Soul Blast 1, but if you don't, I'll give you Vanguard minus 5k power. So this card is really nice. It's also 9k power, so it lets us underswing if we need to in certain matchups. But it's just really nice because it's essentially Soul Blast 1 draw card, whereas Die Ballast was Counterblast 1 draw card. And so I think for that reason, this card is really, really good. Honestly, you could, if you have these available, because like some shops like our locals, for example, can get these super easily. Like we have an abundance of stock, but I know that some shops obviously are, you know, not doing tournaments and can't find stock of these cards, and so it might be a bit expensive. But if it's easier to get than Die Dragon, you could reduce Die Dragon to like 2 and play an extra Gel Sludge or 2, and maybe even play a 4th copy of the Grand Wisdom. So if you're really struggling to get Die Dragon, that could be an option. But I just like him because he's basically just like a draw, and on top of that, if they don't Soul Blast, the minus 5k can be pretty huge sometimes, just because it makes it harder for them to handle your attacks, which I think is really, really cool. And of course, this deck is, you know, meant to be a tank, so the bigger our hand, the better. Of course, a nice finisher is always going to be the Laurel and Stark combo. So this is a pretty Counterblast expensive combo, but it's pretty nice. And Laurel also enables you to do X Gallop on first stride sometimes, even if the setup isn't all right. Once per turn, rearguard circle, act Counterblast 1, rest 4 rearguards to choose a unit and double its power and give it a critical extra. So this is a really nice ability, of course. Also, it's a 6k power unit, so if you need to underswing and not give your opponent damage, you can also go into him too. But overall, it's just nice, like I said, to like give you first stride X Gallop, or make your Stark be double power and stuff like that. So you don't always go for it because of course it's a very big investment, but we also have quite a few cards in this deck that can like go into the soul and stuff like that. So because of that, you don't feel bad to like call down those cards, arrest them, and then put them into the soul to get your abilities off. So I think Laurel is a very welcome card in Premium, and overall it felt like a Premium card from day one, honestly. Now the next 6 cards are basically cards that I think Die Prop will take the place of, because I run these like 3 of each, because the 2 of them combined are basically Die Prop's effect. So first things first, I still play 3 Die Scoopers. Now you might be thinking, damn, why would you play Die Scooper? Like when placed, give a grade 3 Vanguard plus 5k, it doesn't even work with strides. And that is correct, but his first skill is when you ride over him, you look at the top 7 of your deck and reveal a grade 3 and add it to your hand. Obviously, when Die Prop comes out, this will be less necessary, I think. And you'll actually have space for things like Grand Rope if you want to get that like grade 3 search going instead. Because keep in mind, every grade 3 in your hand is like a 20k, 30k shield, right? But this effect is really nice because sometimes you just don't open the Die Liner, and like being able to like ride fix yourself without G assisting is really, really nice. So just for that, I think is really cool. This deck doesn't suffer too much from misriding on like the first stride turn, but anything beyond that, you really want to be in Die Liner because at that point, your grade 3s are so tanky that you really need to go into it. So I think that this card will go eventually with the Clan Collection releasing, but for the time being, it is a very nice card to ride into. And then I still play 3 Die Braves, same reason as Die Dragon. The Soul Blast one to give something 5k is really nice, and he also has the hit pressure to put himself into the soul and draw a card if your Vanguard attack hits. So I think it's quite nice to fill up your soul and cycle cards while also just like soul blasting to give that little bit of power that you need to hit some certain thresholds. So that's basically why I run Die Dragon and Die Brave. If you don't feel the need for that kind of power up, then feel free not to run it. And of course, this is basically my signature card at this point, Mr. Weaking. I really like the one of Weaking. Like, this is a tank deck. This is literally a deck built to tank attacks. And so for me, Weaking is just an auto include. It's gotten worse over time because obviously Soul Blast 2 is something that we used to be able to afford really well, but now we have more and more and more Soul Blasting cards as time goes on. So obviously it's getting a bit more like stingy to actually like afford the Soul Blast, but Soul Blast 2 when your Vanguard is being attacked to minus 10k on the front row attacking unit is really nice. Keep in mind it's front row. I've played against Premium Magnolia that I tried to use this against and I was like, oh wait, it says front row. So yeah, keep that in mind, but it's a nice one of. You don't have to have it, but I honestly really like it. And then reprinted in the Revival selection is the Enigman Com, our recurring PG. So in the drop zone, if you're on GB2, at the end of the battle your Vanguard attacked, if the power was 40k or more, you can countercharge 1 Soul Blast 1 and return it to your hand. And if the Vanguard power was 45k or higher, you can countercharge 1, so you just pay Soul Blast 1 to return it to your hand. Recurring PGs are nice, so I do like it for that reason. As a one of, I think is perfectly fine. Now moving on to the triggers. Of course, I play 4 of these Stride crits. Now, the Stride crit is actually the +1 card you want to be ditching for Stride. You don't want to be discarding your grade 3s for Stride because they are your strongest shields in the deck. Like, your grade 3s will reach basically like 30+ k shield, which is really, really nice. Or not 30+, they will reach 30. But so for that reason, I don't think you want to be discarding your grade 3s for Stride, especially not like first Stride, outside of like using a Progenitor or using your Zeroth Dragon. So I think that kind of explains it. It's just a good, Stride crits are just good because it is the easiest way to pay for Stride. Of course, we run 4 heals for G-Guard purposes. Our G-Guards are half decent, but that's okay. Of course, when heal guards come out, this deck will get even better because those are grade 3s. So your basic heal guard would be 25k shield before Geomaglass, 35k shield after 1 Geomaglass, 45k shield when you have all of them face up, which is quite insane. It's genuinely quite insane. Then I do run stand triggers, and these were also reprinted in the Revival selection, so you can get them very easily, which is of course Operator Girl Linka. I think I didn't used to run her, and then I questioned myself why I didn't, to be honest, because this card is just really, really good. GB2 Act, put her into the soul. If your Vanguard's power is 20k or higher, you draw 1, and if it's 35k or higher, you give your Vanguard this skill, as long as it has the burst ability, that when you drive check a grade 3, Soul Blast 1, and choose a Sentinel in your opponent's Guardian Circle, and then just nullify the cannot be hit effect. So it's literally a Daikaiser effect, but this is nice because, of course, you can only use this with X-Gallop in this deck, but that is basically the main card that people PG because that hits for like 80k plus, right? It hits for like 100k at times, which of course your opponent's going to try to PG, and if you nullify that, well then GG, right? Because I'm swinging with Force 2, I might be checking crits here and there, so obviously that's really good. Just keep in mind that you play stands when you play this deck, because sometimes I'll catch myself attacking Vanguard first and then missing out on an extra like reguard attack here and there, so do keep that in mind. Since we run 1 grade 1 PG, we only run 3 draw PGs, which I think is perfectly fine in this deck. Like, you actually plus quite a lot from stuff like Geomaglass, so you don't really need more than 3 draws in my opinion. So 3 draw PGs I think is perfectly fine. And of course, 1 overtrigger, the Eldo Breath. I had a funny game once at locals where I was playing against Chaos, and he was on Freeze Ray and had both of my front rows locked, and I essentially went into X Gallop. I think he had 10 cards in hand or something, so I had like a really big X Gallop, and then he was on 2 damage, so I attack with X Gallop, he no guards it, so normally he would go to 4. I check Overtrigger on the first check, which doubles my critical to 4, and he dies in 1 swing. So yeah, this leads to things like that happening, so obviously we do want it in the deck, and the starter is just Goyusha, nothing too special. The V starter is always going to be the best because it gives you 2 cards if you're going second, which is always going to be great. Then of course, I don't show these off very often, but I have like dividers for my GZone. This is like a going first, going second card. So this is like, if you're going first, this is the card, and if you're going second, it's the G Fukuhara. So I don't know, I just wanted to share that. And then this is Mirage from Macross Delta. This is a Crusade card, an old TCG that sadly died out, but this is my divider between my GZone and my actual main deck. Let's talk about the GZone real quick. I think the GZone, it's changed. It has changed, and I do have to, explain things here and there. So let's talk about it. First things first, we have the 3 X Gallops. I can't find my 3rd SP one, so bear with me for the time being. You can play 2 actually, but 3 I think is like the comfort spot, so that if you like the game really goes on for super long, you might need it. But essentially, when you attack with him, if his power is 40k or higher, count +1 and flip a G unit face up, and he gets drive +1, so 4 drive checks just like that. And at the end of the battle, if his power is 80k or higher, you can stand him and lose 4 drive checks. So obviously, if you give him extra drives with the Dizoris, he has 5 drive checks going first, or like 6 even on the first attack if you use double Dizoris, which is very counterblast expensive. And then GB3, for every face-up G unit you have in your G-Zone, he gets plus 10k power. So he kind of like self-funds his own skill. Going first, you can ride up to Die-Liner and then G-Guard in order to do him first stride, because then you will actually have GB3 from attacking with him. So obviously, you know, you're going from like 40 to like 60 plus already, which is very nice. Just keep in mind that to get the extra drive, or like to even like proc the effect, you have to be at 40k. And normally going to be at 28 when you stride, so do use some power-up effects. You know, just using a Die Brave is going to put you over the limit, because you'll go to 33 plus the 8 will take you to 41. So of course, that is an easy way to set this up for the first stride. But of course, if you're going into this from like, you know, second stride onwards, usually you already have, you know, 2 face-up G units, so this will basically just be auto into your win con. And of course, I've been talking about him the entire deck profile, Mr. Geomaglass as 4 of. This card is just basically the reason why this deck is so good. In the Vanguard circle and also face up in the G-Zone. If face up, all of your grade 3 on Rearguard and Guardian circle get plus 5k power, plus 5k shield, and intercept. We kind of forget that he also gives the power up like in power, not just shield, which is really, really nice. But of course, if you have 4 of him face up, that's plus 20k shield to your grade 3s. With Die-Liner, that's 30k shield grade 3s. Heal Guardians are 45 if you have all of them. And generally speaking, you will want to, especially going second, first stride this and flip another copy, and then after that you'll want to basically stride the Excalibur and flip another copy, and then stride an Excalibur and flip the last copy. Like, that's usually how the game progresses, so you can keep that in mind if you want to. But of course you can switch it up depending on the situation, which is really nice. Other reason why he's a great first stride is his second skill. When he attacks, can almost 1 and flip any G unit face up. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck and call 2 from among them to rearguard circles, and then shuffle your deck, and he gets +1 critical for each of your grade 3 units. So if you call 2 grade 3s from this skill, he suddenly goes from a crit 2, because you're in force 2, to a crit 4, which of course, just like Die-Liner, will force your opponent to guard immediately, which is really, really nice. So just a great stride, honestly one of the best additions to premium DP we've ever had, and I really hope the next stride we get in 2022 is anything near as good. Alright, last couple of DP strides, and then we'll go into the Stargate one, so the Progenitor as well as the Zeroth. So first things first, we have Final Dimax DX. So this is our stride we go into, and we are completely damage starved. So if we have no counterblast, this card is quite nice. When he attacks, you flip a G unit face up and put all of your resting rearguards into your soul. Reveal 7 cards on top of your deck, and then call up to the same number of cards as number of face-up cards in your G-Zone from among them to rearguard circles in order of highest power, so from highest to lowest, and then shuffle your deck. If you put 4 more cards into your soul for this cost, all the units get plus 10k and a crit. So not just the cold units, but himself included. So he's a good little stride. Like, obviously you can use like Laurel, I guess, to rest 4 and then put them into the soul if you want to do something crazy like that, but that's not really necessary because he can just run into a PG. He's good as a first stride, you know, to just like put 1 card into the soul and like call 1, like you literally just like trade. And because it says put all, it also means it can be nothing. So if you just stride into him and attack, you can just flip a G unit and look at top 7 and call a grade 3 from among them, and that can just be like a Dizoris, or you can have like 1 front row that's like standing and call yourself a Diarm when your opponent has like 10 cards in hand, which will suddenly make the whole field feel more explosive. He's also fine in the late game if you need to go into him when you have no CB, because when you have a lot of face of G units, obviously he's going to call you a full field and also give them a bunch of power, which is quite nice. So I think he's a good little, you know, counterblast less stride. Because the games with this deck can go on pretty long, I have retried the GB8, which is kind of a fun card. So GB8, when he attacks a Vanguard, he gets plus 10k and a crit for every one of your rearguards. At the end of the battle, if his power is 80k or higher, all your rearguards get plus 10k for each of this unit's criticals until end of turn. So obviously he gets plus 60, so he hits, you know, 68 just by attacking if you have a full board. But of course you can use power-up skills to just like have 4 rearguards as well. But it's a pretty cool also like counterblastless stride to go into. I don't really play it because it's a GBA, but I play it because it's a long game kind of card. And sometimes you just like run out of your other good strides, and this is a great way to like get that final little push in as well. So I think the GBA is quite cool. Then of course, I already talked about this as a finisher, but of course Mr. Stark is our Zeroth Dragon, also reprinted in the Revival selection, so you can pick him up. And so is the Excalibur, so make sure you have that too. So of course this card is a ultimate stride, so you have to have 3 or more face-up G units and discard the same name as your Vanguard to stride into him. And when you do stride into him, you counterblast 2 and give himself the skill to lose 2 drive checks, but he doesn't rest when he attacks, and he can attack up to 3 times in 1 turn. So of course, this is really great with Mr. Commander Laurel as well as Dizoris to give you extra drive checks. Honestly, I find Dizoris better than the Laurel because of just like the extra drives. Like doing twin or triple drive on 3 Vanguard attacks usually will kill your opponent, especially because it's on a force too. And then this is something that I put in quite recently, but I play one of the Progenitor. I do play the Origorum, and now I regret not having... I feel like I had the like SVR one somewhere, but I can't find it anymore. Or SGR, I guess. But so, I don't play this card for the Vanguard skill, so when he attacks, count +1 and increase or decrease the power of all of your opponent's units to 0 until end of turn. Like, that's like a kind of whatever skill. Honestly, you can just stride into this without using the skill. But the reason why I play him is because he says in the GZone, he cannot be turned face up by abilities, but if he is face up in your GZone, you can stride without paying the cost. So obviously, in order to stride into him, you have to discard the same name as your Vanguard, right? So you have to discard your, like, Dieliner, right, in most cases. The reason why I really like that continuous skill is because you are able to not discard grade 3s as stride fodder for the rest of the game. So that is more shield that you save in the long run by going into this. Obviously, if you have counterblast, you want to be going into the, you know, X Gallop or into the Geo Maglass. But if you don't have CB, like, just go into him and swing, right? Just go into him and swing with him, and you will basically be giving yourself first, like, free strides for the rest of the game. You don't have to discard grade 3s or your stride crits either, which I think is kind of worth it at times. And it has come up a few times where I was like, damn, if I went into this, I would have had more shield throughout the entire game. And so therefore it felt more worth it. But of course, it's more like a, you know, like, you don't have any counterblast in hand and you happen to have a, you know, persona basically in your hand to discard for the stride cost. So I think it's actually worth as a one-of. It's just a cool little tech that I like to make the deck even more like defensive, I guess. Then I play one Excalibur. This is, you know, going into G guards. Excalibur is a 25k shield, so when the heal trigger 20k is barely not enough, you can go into this. You also have the option to discard 1 and give your Vanguard plus 4k for the rest of the turn. So if your opponent's like, you know, hitting you for like, I don't know, 13s nonstop, then this will be a nice way to dodge that, I guess. But I never really use that skill. It's just there to be a 25k shield, which especially with your Guardians might be worth. It's a good question, right? Because Heal Guardians are going to be the biggest shield you have in the deck, right? So that's kind of funny. Then I play one of the reprinted Atlantis Dolphin. This is our GB1 G-Guard. So when you guard with him, you have to have already a face-up unit in your G-Zone. And then you flip up a G-Guardian from your G-Zone face down to use his skill when your opponent's Vanguard has attacked. And then if you do, he gets plus 5k shield until the end of that battle for each of your rear guards. And if he had 30k or more shield, you countercharge 1, soul charge 1. So the counter charge is pretty sweet, and also the soul charge is also pretty sweet, so we play one for that reason, but it's only when the opponent's Vanguard attacks, and you have to have a pretty big board, which we usually don't. So for that reason, I think it's kind of whatever. Then I play one of the Zeal G-Guards. This one is also kind of the same. Like, when you guard with it, soul loss 1, choose an opponent's unit, give a minus 5k power for that battle, and then if the number of cards in your damage zone is equal to or more than the number of cards in your opponent's damage zone, this is a misprint, keep that in mind, you can counterblast 1, and if you do, you give your Vanguard plus 5k until the end of the turn. So you're basically giving yourself half a defensive, or a pre-V defensive, I guess, just by counterblasting 1, which can be pretty good. This does come up sometimes against like Axel matchups and stuff, so it might be worth considering just like that. And then finally, the best G-Guard right now is Mr. G05. So he's also reprinted in the Revival selection. So he says, you Soul Blast a card with 5000 power or greater when you call him to Guardian Circle, and if you do, he gets plus 10k shield until the end of that battle, so he's a 25. But if a card was put into your damage zone this turn, so if your opponent like poked you with a rear guard first and you took the damage, this will be a 30k shield instead because he gets another 5k. Obviously smaller than Heal Guardians will be with all the grade 3 buffs in the long run, but for the time being, this card is like one of our chunkiest shields, so without like having a full field setup, alright? Obviously, the Atlantis Dolphin is also 30k if we have a full field, but this is 30k without that, so obviously we like that quite a lot. Alright, and then to round it off, I guess I'll do my little bonus segment that I do now with all the Overdress deck profiles, which is of course the little Mulligan segment. So what I usually do, if you haven't been watching them, is I take 2 dice, one of which will be me, the other would be the opponent, and we choose who will start. So let's see who starts. Looks like it's going to be the opponent, so we're going second here. Whether you go first or second is honestly quite fine in premium in my opinion right now, at least for this deck. Looking at this hand though, since we're going second, we'll be able to use the Gel Sludge here, and we don't have a grade 1, and like the 3s are not ones we want to ride, so we're going to put everything back here. We do play more grade 1s than most DP lists, so I think we should be able to draw into one pretty safely, and yes we did, and we also got, of course, the Die Brave, which is very nice. So, stand up Vanguard, let's go. So we're going second, so here we just basically just want to ride into the Die Scooper, draw one from the starter and get our quick shield. Just because I'm too late to get my quick shield, I will just use this as a proxy and put it to the side here. And then you can give your opponent the first damage here, like depending on the matchup, of course, it really does depend, but you know, just to see what you get, especially because we don't have the right grade in hand yet. And then usually your opponent will probably give you 1 damage as well, because either they don't know what DP is doing or something along those lines. Anyway, we stand and draw here, draw into a Laurel, that's actually quite fine. Then we can ride into this. We can choose which one you want to resolve first. I do recommend using the Die Scooper first to check top 7 for a grade 3 here. So we got 6 and 7. Don't pick up the Gel Sludge though, that's not good. So let's check top 7 for a Die Liner, and yes, we have it. That's why I run this grade 1 in the first place, because it does give you this kind of feeling of safety in case you don't find the Die Liner. It's very, very important in my opinion, so do keep that in mind. And then depending on, of course, like if our opponent Counter Blasted, they might actually just, you know, this skill might be free, but if not, you just Soul Blast 1 for the Gel Sludge here, and you're going to get to draw a card. You always go for the card draw if you have to choose. Don't go for the minus power, like card draw is always more important. And then our hand basically looks like this, and if you want to like underswing to not give them more damage, you can just like put down something like a Laurel or a Die Brave or something. That'll be good later on. Can put it behind Vanguard too, because we're going second, so if you want to set up for like a first stride X-Gallop or something like that, and you basically can just like swing with 9k and then see, okay, we get a crit. And then depending on the matchup, maybe you want to put this to the Vanguard, maybe you would have boosted, but let's just say we're damage denying, so we give all the effects here to not deal the damage, and that's basically it. And then they go to their grade 3 turn, you know, probably give you, like if they don't ride up and don't give you first stride, we still ride up anyway, but let's just say they do stride and they hit us with like 2 damage or something, so we're now at 3 damage, and I don't know, let's just say they get a 10k shield out of me or something, right? Just to, for the sake of imagination, let's just put it that way. All right, so then we're gonna draw into a stride crit, which is pretty cool, I guess. So we're gonna ride into Die Liner. We get ourselves a nice Force 2, of course, on the Vanguard circle, because that's what we always want to have. And then without using Die Liner's effect, you're just gonna use your Stride Fodder here. Obviously, since we don't have any units face up, and let's assume our opponent doesn't have a 10 card hand, we're not going to go into the X-Gallop, and instead we're going to just start off with the Geomaglass. And here you can kind of think about like how much do you want to commit to this turn, right? I would personally just like hold everything as much as possible and swing with the hit pressure of this for the time being. Use Geomaglass's effect, do Counterblast 1, and then flip a copy of Geomaglass himself face up in the G-Zone. And then you get to check the top 7 for the 2 cards basically, which is really, really nice. So let's see what we get. We got some nice grade 3s. This is definitely quite cool. So we can basically just like call these down here. And, you know, we said the opponent doesn't have 10 cards in hand, so let's just say this doesn't give the power up. But if it does, that's a mid-battle power-up, which is pretty sick. And then, of course, now our Vanguard attacking for a total of 4 damage, which is really, really nice. And then we get our Twin Drive over trigger because we're good players. Again, I guess with this will pop. Let's say they PG'd, so we give it here or something. Heal, because we're good players, I guess. Why am I sacking in a demo game? I don't know. And then a grade 3. All right, so that's fine. And let's just say this gets PG'd as well. This swings empty or doesn't swing at all. It's fine. And then this goes back to the G-Zone. So now our grade 3s are 20k shield, which is already very, very cool. So of course we can basically just like intercept this away with as a 20k shield because we don't need it on the board after it comes into play. We do want to keep this around though, so obviously keep that in mind. We can now G-Guard, for example, or we can take a damage, you know, to see what we get. We get a Die Liner, that's fine. But now we can G-Guard into something like the GO5. So, you know, you can go into GO5. Keep in mind that you are kind of low on Soul Blast at this point, but be careful with that. But of course, the Dizoras will fill that back up. So we can G-Guard, have 3 face up in the G-Zone, so that'll make our X-Gallop a bit stronger. And then basically, you know, just like pretend whatever amount of damage your opponent is doing to you, you know, you kind of play around with that. So I'll just say like, you know, we dropped another G-Guard or something. But this time all we needed was X-Caravu, and it was enough to protect us with the 25k power. And, you know, just kind of play around with that idea. If one has 10 cards in hand, double Die Arm will definitely kill them, so let's just play into that idea, right? Let's just play into that idea. So stand and draw, and here we basically have a perfect setup, right? You can basically, again, drop the Stride Crit in order to go into the X-Gallop this time around, which is really, really nice. And then you want to call yourself this sweet Dizoras here, call yourself a Linka, because now, because of the GB3, you have enough power to get the draw out and give the skill to the Vanguard, so that's quite cool. So we currently have 4 face-up units, so that is plus 40k to the Vanguard, so it was at 28, so it's at 68, and basically these will give another plus 10, so it'll be at 88. With an 8k boost, it'll be at 96, which is pretty insane. But if you want to go further beyond, you can call double Die Arm if they have all of those cards in hand to give another plus 60k to your front front row, which is pretty hilarious. And then of course, you know, the optimal combo here is you attack with Dizoris, counter plus 1, go to soul, give your Vanguard plus 1 drive, attack with a Dizoris, counter plus 1, goes to soul, give yourself an extra drive. Putting my arms around all these cables is very hard. And then you basically just swing with the Excalibur with 6 drive checks as well as a bajillion power. Quite literally, it's PG or die, and if they PG, they also die. So we're gonna check 6 cards here, get a stand trigger, get a grade 3, so we can now Soul Blast 1 and kill a PG that they put down, which is great. Check another one, grade 2, heal trigger, well, probably we're not healing at this point, and then a grade 1. So that's fine and dandy, we killed 1 PG, and then he restands and attacks again with 2 drives. And once again, we check 2, no grade 3s, but still, you know, look at the kind of hand you end on. So that's the general gist of the Mulligan for premium DP and like the average game plan, I guess, depending on the matchup, of course. And so this is my current rendition of Premium Dimension Plays. So I hope you liked the deck profile. This is still, you know, my favorite deck in Premium. One of my favorite decks in the TCG period. I really do enjoy playing it. It's one of those decks that I feel like I can get infinite mileage out of and just like never really get bored of it. So if you enjoyed DP or you like the DP playstyle or you think giant robots are cool, then give it a try, honestly. It's a very fun deck. Just try it out on like Cardfight area or something before committing to it, of course, because some of these cards can be quite expensive. But overall, a lot of stuff was reprinted, and I mentioned throughout the deck profile the kind of replacements you can make for the not so cheap cards. So hopefully that helps you, you know, make your first step to the premium DP journey. You can also play a more Zeal based list if you don't want to play stuff like Die Dragon and Die Brave. So if that helps, you can also just play a list like that. And if you want to see the deck in action, you can check out my streams, twitch.tv/DifferentFight. I do play premium there quite often these days, and usually at least play 1 or 2 games with this deck before I play something else. So yeah, that's basically gonna be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, but otherwise I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.